I first learned about 30 more than 30 years ago. Her name is Catherine Barnwell. She's now 84 years old, but this woman transformed the Bible translation process in the world. She turned it upside down. And I first heard about her from people who were working in Bible translation who were offended at her methods because she found a way to use ordinary, common nationals from language groups to translate the Bible. She said you didn't have to have a PhD in linguistics. You didn't have to have Greek and Hebrew training. You just needed to look for the meaning of Scripture and find a way to translate that meaning into your mother tongue. And she turned Bible translation upside down. She did it slowly. She did it one language group at a time, and then 6 at a time, and then 12 at a time. And she got noticed for the first time on a national scale, or an international scale in the early 90s. And, just to give you some idea of how transformative her work has been, up until the middle of the 90s, there were about 380 translations of the Bible done in other languages. And that took 100 years to get there. Since that time, in the mid-90s, up until 2021, there are now 800 Bibles because of Catherine Barnwell's techniques. Every day at 84 years of age, struggling with osteoarthritis, she works out of a small apartment in London, and she, via Zoom now, works with Bible translators all over the world. She does that for 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, because she feels this urgency, this incredible urgency to reach people with the gospel of Jesus. It is driving her. And there's one thing that stands in her way, and I learned this word just really this week. The one thing that stands in her way is something called orthology, or not orthography, which is the systems that we use of letters and symbols to write down a language. Because so many of the languages in the world don't even have a system for writing them. So that has to be the first thing. The orthography has to be the first thing that they come up with in order to begin a translation process, because it's the one thing that stands in the way. But that's the only thing standing in her way. She's currently working on 24 different language groups in Nigeria all at the same time. All at the same time, by using national mother tongue speakers of those languages. And her story is just, it's amazing and it's thrilling, and I am completely intrigued by this woman and the passion she has for getting the Bible translated, especially the Gospel of Luke. If you've ever heard of the Jesus film is almost a word-for-word description coming from the Gospel of Luke. So if you get the Gospel of Luke translated into a language, they can dub it over the Jesus film, and the gospel can be put on a screen, and people can be introduced to Jesus. It's an incredible tool that's available to us right now in the world, and it's multiplying, it's cascading, it's like a domino effect, and a lot of it is because of this woman, Catherine, Kate, as she is known all over the world, or Mama Kate. Last week, we talked about our commitment to go further. And we said that in order to help us understand what God is calling us and the urgency, the compulsion we feel to go further, that we've refined our mission statement as a church. And we have refined that to say that we're here to inspire people to follow Jesus. We're here to inspire people to follow Jesus. And that in itself can stand on its own. But we add something to that now, and we say, and eliminate as many obstacles as possible. So what do we do here at Northgate? We inspire people to follow Jesus. That may mean that we're inspiring someone to follow Jesus for the first time, or it may mean that we're inspiring somebody who's followed Jesus for 70 years, and we're giving them a new boost, a new level of enthusiasm, new energy, new vision, new passion for following Jesus. And today, we want to talk about why it's so important that we do this faster. Because we have to accelerate. You know what's going on in the world. You've heard all the bad things that are going on in the world. Just so far this year, as far as we can tell and as far as the estimates go, just from wars around the world, there are 25,000 people that have died in Ukraine, 10,000 in Myanmar, 10,000 people in Afghanistan, 10,000 people in Ethiopia, Iraq, Mali, Sudan. These are all places that are struggling with war right now, today, while we're sitting here. In Colombia, 2,500 some people because of civil war and the war with the drug lords. And Somalia, Central African Republic. We could list country after country. One of the countries that we're close to as a church is Haiti. We've sent mission teams to Haiti for years, but not recently, because it's too dangerous for us to go to Haiti. And we're hoping that changes, but that's indicative of so much of the developing world. And that's just the wars. Right now, we know that in 2021, 17 million people died because of heart disease, 10 million people because of cancer. We know that there are over 6.5 million deaths due to COVID. And then we deal with all the other things, right? All the other things that we deal with, many of us deal with on an everyday basis. Mental illness and addictions. And this is not the nice one, but human trafficking and immigration. And then there are the issues that divide us so horribly in this country. The LGBTQ issues, the abortion issues, the education policy, the green agenda, taxation, justice reform. All these things are vying for our attention. And my friends, Satan is using all of this to distract us from what Jesus has called us to do. Because we actually spend more time thinking about this list, all these slides I've just put up on the screen. We spend more time thinking about that than we do thinking about the people who are far from Jesus, who desperately need hope and peace and forgiveness and rest from Jesus. And if there's anything that I hope we accomplish this morning together, it's that we would catch a little bit of the passion and urgency that Catherine feels, that Mama Kate feels, for reaching people with the good news about Jesus Christ. This is what Jesus said about what we need to be so aware of. He said, learn this lesson from the fig tree. He's teaching this, and Matthew records these words for us. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer's near. That's how they could tell that summer was coming, when the fig tree began to change. And then Jesus says, even so, when you see all these things, and he's talked about all the things that we just talked about. Not in the words and the details and the numbers that we put on the screen, but he's saying, when you see all these things going on in the world, and you know it's really bad, be sure you understand that the time is near. You see, the disciples were asking, when's the kingdom of God going to come? We want to set up this literal kingdom. And Jesus didn't bother with trying to explain that he was coming to set a kingdom up in our hearts, that he was coming to establish his bride, the church. He said, no. He says, you need to be aware of all these things going on. This needs to drive you. You need to have an urgency about this because the end is near. And about that day or hour, nobody knows. Nobody knows. Not even the angels in heaven or the Son of God knows. Only the Father knows when the kingdom is going to come, when Jesus is going to return. Only the Father knows. In my life, one of the phrases that I have used many times, that I use with myself all the time, is I want to live today as if Jesus could return at any moment, maybe before I'm done with the sentence. But I also want to plan as if he's going to wait another 1,000 years. And there's so many ways that I want Jesus to come right now. And for some of you, that's true as well. I know there's some young people and teenagers who say, well, I still want to do this, and I want to have that, and I want to accomplish this. I get it. And there's some of us, and I include myself in some of this, there's some of us that have friends and family who don't know Jesus yet, and we're saying, Jesus, can you wait? There's still a chance. There's still an opportunity for them to come to know you, for them to be inspired to follow Jesus. I'm still trying to eliminate the obstacles, Jesus. But we live in this moment with this reality. Jesus could come back at any second. Only the Father knows. Only the Father knows. He could come back at any second, but he could also wait. And we don't know how long he's going to wait. But every generation of Jesus followers, every generation has anticipated Jesus coming back. And we cannot lose sight of that. We cannot lose sight of that. You know why? Because there are 25,000 uninspired people that live within 25 miles of where we're sitting right now. There are 25,000 people that need Jesus. That's just in our communities. That's just in our local area. And we dare not sit back and wait for somebody else to do it. We can't do that. We have an unprecedented opportunity. You have an unprecedented opportunity to embrace the power of the gospel through the shed blood of Jesus to change people's lives. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to focus on people and not programs. We're going to focus on relationships with people and not programs. We're going to focus on the whole idea that a program, a class, an event, that's not going to change somebody's life. Relationships change people's lives. I will never forget a completely unscientific survey of 3,000 some university students at a conference where I was a workshop leader, and I got to be in this conference, and it was a great privilege. But I'll never forget one of the speakers doing a very unscientific, spur-of-the-moment survey of the audience. And he says, how many of you came to know Jesus because of a television preacher? And there were a few hands that went up in this room of 3,000. How many of you came because of Christian radio? A few more. How many of you came to know Jesus and came to follow Jesus because you went to a church service and there was an altar call and you walked a center aisle and you prayed a prayer? And you know there were probably 100 people who stood up on that one. And then he said, how many of you came to follow Jesus because somebody took a personal interest in you and got to know you and listened to you and developed a relationship with you and eventually led you to Jesus? And there was hardly a person seated in the entire auditorium. Relationships are how we lead people to be inspired to follow Jesus. It's not by taking them to church, although that might build into a relationship. It happens because we take them to coffee, because we go help them cut firewood, or we go take care of their kids when they're sick, or we do their laundry or take care of their dishes. It happens in the relationships we build with people. And we have to stop pretending in the church. And I've been a part of the church all my life. I grew up a preacher's kid. I've been invested and committed to the church my entire life, and I still am, but I'm not committed to programs anymore because I found out programs don't work. It's relationships that work. We're trying to change even our vocabulary here at Northgate to talk about creating environments for relationships. So we don't have a youth program, we have a teenagers environment where there are a bunch of adults who come and we're investing our lives and we're building relationships with teenagers because that's what's going to inspire them to follow Jesus. We have an environment on Wednesday nights where we have kids in and we have a number of adults and teenagers who are there to inspire those kids to follow Jesus through relationships, not through a program. We're doing our Project 246 to help you get to know people that maybe you don't know within our household of faith. And we're doing that not for any purpose other than to maybe kickstart some new relationships. And what we desire as a leadership team for Northgate is that all of us would begin to see how important it is, how urgent it is for us to build relationships with people who are far from Jesus, because that's how they come, not through a program. Not through a program. You know, and then we put our emphasis on faithfulness. And we say faithfulness is way more important than pretending that everything is A-okay. I saw somebody this week and had a conversation with somebody who's a friend of mine. And his comment to me is, you know, I don't go to church anymore because everybody there is fake. And honestly, I agreed with him. Because way too many of us put on a mask when we walk in the church door. The argument that took place in the car on the way over here gets switched off, and we smile and we say everything is okay. When someone asks us how we're doing, we say fine, and we pretend. We act like we're in a play. And my friends, faithfulness is way more important than pretending everything is okay. And that builds into the next point. Humility is way more important than keeping rules. Humility is way more important than keeping rules. Humbly admitting, yeah, man, right now my life's a mess. Humbly admitting and saying and honestly saying to somebody, hey, you know, I had a really bad day last week. Now, you can't do that with everybody in every situation, right? But there need to be people in your life where humility is honored more than keeping rules. And we have to figure out how we can serve rather than perform. We have to figure out how to serve rather than perform. Because, you know, there are all kinds of performances around us all the time. We talk about this often when Levi and I sit down to talk about worship and our worship team. We talk about not having a performance, but having a participatory experience where we learn how to worship Jesus. That's one of the reasons why, if you look at Levi's official title, we call him the leader of worshipers, not the worship leader. Because the emphasis is not on Levi or any member of our worship team. That's not the emphasis. The emphasis is us as we worship. He's the leader of worshipers. We're trying to be really proactive about saying the right kinds of words to communicate the right things, that serving is way more important than performing. Performances are empty. Performances feel fake. Performances are acting and putting on a show, and that's not what we're about. That's not what we want to be. Why? Because we have this unprecedented opportunity to reach the uninspired people around us who deserve to be inspired to follow Jesus. Not to force it down their throats, not to somehow make them do something that they don't want to do, but to inspire people to follow Jesus, inspire people to restart following Jesus, inspire people that have been following Jesus to do it more passionately, with more urgency, because we have this opportunity to impact the world around us. And you know how much it would impact the world around you if we were to follow Jesus the way he has called us to follow him, as unconditionally and as radically as he has called us to follow him. You know. But you know what happens? It happens to me. We get so busy with the stuff of life that we fail to grasp the opportunities that he's putting right in front of us, the unprecedented opportunities to communicate the love of Jesus, to communicate how inspired we are to follow him. So what's it going to take? Well, it's going to take your time. And I'm introducing this today, and there's some people who say, well, you're supposed to call for a response at the same time you do it. No, I'm going to introduce three things here in the next couple minutes that I want you to think about, because next week I am going to ask for a response. It takes time to inspire other people to follow Jesus. It takes time to invest in relationships. It takes time to move away from performances and serve other people. It takes time. It takes a lot of our time. And we're going to ask you for a new, fresh, renewed commitment. And some of you are already giving in this area, huge chunks. And we're not trying to demean that or diminish that, but we're saying, something? We have an unprecedented opportunity in front of us, and we need more of us giving time to these things that are going to inspire people to follow Jesus. And it's going to take your treasure. It's going to take your finances. One of the things that we need to accomplish as a household of faith is we need to see God move in a miraculous way to help us wipe out as much of the indebtedness that we still have, so that we can invest that money in other ways. And there are so many things that need our attention. One of the things that we have this desire to do, that we ought to be doing right now if it weren't for the treasure element, and that is, we need somebody to kind of be a pastor to our digital audience. We need somebody to interact with them, to love on them. We need somebody right now who is interacting with people who are watching us live and exchanging text messages and chats and monitoring the chat rooms and all those things, because those people matter to Jesus. But we have a tendency to put our emphasis on the people who show up face to face, but our digital audience is really, really important. And if you're watching us online, we want you to know how important you are to us. By providing somebody that can be a pastor to you, that can connect with you, that can be a spiritual influence in your life, that can provide spiritual direction. We need to do this. And that's just one example of how our treasure needs to be used. And then, not only that, not only do we need your time and your treasure, we need your talents. There's some of you in here who are already giving your talents in sacrificial ways, and it goes without saying of how much we appreciate you, and we try to show that appreciation to you and let you know how valuable you are to us when you do that. But my friends, that's less than 15% of the people who come to Northgate, less than 15%. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the impact in our community if maybe 50% of us were giving our talents in a way that inspires people to follow Jesus? I'm not asking you to give your talents to a program. I'm asking you to give your talents in ways that build relationships. I'm asking you to give your talents in ways that honor the serving rather than the performance. I'm asking you to invest your talents in ways that enable us as a household of faith to grasp this unprecedented opportunity that we have to reach people for Jesus. And we're going to give you opportunities in more detail a week from today. But I'm setting you up. I'm warning you. And a lot of you will probably stay away and tune out. Be honest. But this is what's going to move us forward. This is what we have to do, because I feel the same urgency as Mama Kate to reach the people with the gospel, so much so that at 84 years of age, she's putting in 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week on Zoom, helping Bible translators literally all over the world. I love these words from Paul's letter to the church at Corinth. He says it this way, but if we can have that, yeah. But let me tell you something wonderful, a mystery I'll probably never fully understand. We're not all going to die, but we all are going to be changed. You hear a blast to end all blats from a trumpet, and in the time that you look up and blink your eyes, it's all over. On signal from that trumpet from heaven, the dead will be up and out of their graves beyond the reach of death, never to die again. And at the same moment, and in the same way, we will all be changed. With all this going on for us, my dear, dear friends, stand your ground. Stand your ground and don't hold back your time, your treasure, your talent. Don't hold back. Inspire the people around you to follow. Oh, yeah, I have one more verse, don't I? Throw yourselves into the work of the Master. What's that work? It's not programs in the church. What Jesus did is he built relationships. He established relationships with people. He established relationships with 12 guys, one who betrayed him, 11 were left. And you know what they did? They went out and turned the world upside down. They turned the world upside down. The work of the Master, confident that nothing you do for the Master is a waste of your time, your treasure, or your talent. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to inspire people to follow Jesus, and we want to eliminate as many obstacles as we possibly can. Now, I got to tell you that this is really personal for me, okay? One of the things that impacted our staff, our leadership team, but mostly me, when I was in that incredible accident that God miraculously helped me survive on December 21st. One of the things that we came face to face with is, guess what? I'm mortal. I'm going to die. And I'll probably give out before I die. But we have to start planning for that as a household of faith. I'll be 68 years old next month. I think I can do this as long as we have young staff, like Levi and Liz, Chad back helping with the tech stuff. As long as we have young staff, I can do this for a long time. That's not to say I should. And as a leadership team, we have talked and prayed about this, and I'll own the dream, okay? I have this dream, and the elders have now bought into this and shared this with me. It's ours. It's not just mine. We have this dream that maybe we could move forward and do something that would be really unusual in the life of Northgate and really unusual in the life of most churches. And we would like to identify an associate pastor and bring an associate pastor in on staff and have that pastor work with me for a few years. And granted, we may try this and find it doesn't work, and we may have to start over, or we may abandon the process at any point in between. But our ideal, the utopian ideal, would be to find that person, have that person work as an associate pastor for about 3 years, and then that person and myself become co-pastors, and then me move into the associate pastor position, and then move out. Because that's not usual in church life. That's not the way most churches do it. But my observation, having lived in church world all my life, having worked as a pastor to pastors in a small denomination for 10 years and watching transition after transition, what usually happens in a church when the pastor leaves or retires is the church is discombobulated. They go off in all kinds of different directions. Somebody new comes in with a new kind of vision, a new way of doing things, a new kind of vocabulary about the church, and everything changes, and people are left confused and aimless for several years while everything gets back up to speed and restarts. That's not what we want for Northgate. But you know what it's going to take? It's going to take an incredible amount of sacrifice on our part, because right now, we can't afford to bring in an associate pastor because we have a mortgage payment every month. So part of what we're going to ask you for next week is not only for more time and better use of talents, but we're going to ask you for some of your treasure, because we need to wipe it out. And God has already proven himself a miraculous God in this area, in this household of faith. Because our builder and our banker are completely blown away that literally in 2 years that we have paid that mortgage down by over half. They're blown away. But it's only God, isn't it? Because, you know, if you attend here on a regular basis, you can attest to the fact that we don't stand up here every week and talk about money. We just don't. Because every month our bills are paid. And we just trust God. But now we feel compelled, because of the urgency of the moment, because of the unprecedented opportunity that we have to inspire people to follow Jesus and to eliminate as many obstacles as possible. That's what we're about. That's what we need to do. And I feel, and our leadership team, our elders feel like we have this incredible desire to move us forward faster, to go further faster. And we know it's going to take all of us working together. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about the together part of this. It's going to take all of us working together to make this happen. And we're going to have to invest all the time we can, all the treasure we can, all the talent that we can muster. We're going to have to put that together to see what God is going to do. Because, my friends, there are 25,000 people in our community within 25 miles of where we're sitting right now who are not inspired to follow Jesus. And that ought to break our hearts. We ought to weep and wail and gnash our teeth, because they face a Christless eternity, separated from all that is good and true and light. That's what they face. And we have this opportunity. And believe me, we're not the only church in town that has that opportunity, but we have to embrace our part of it, don't we? We have to recognize our responsibility. And that's our challenge. That's our challenge. So stand. And let me just review where we ended last week. Last week, we talked about the fact that in Jesus' day, when a young person was chosen by a rabbi to follow that rabbi, in this case, Jesus, the saying that was pronounced over that person was, "May you follow your rabbi so closely that you become covered in his dust." That's what we're talking about here, friends. That you, each one of you, would follow Jesus so closely that you would be covered in his dust. Amen. Amen.